Hi Alvaro, I hope you're doing well. So we're going to have a look tonight at uh, our next lesson or our next grammar lesson, and we're going to be looking at something a little different than what we normally look at. So tonight we're going to be looking at discourse markers, adverbs and adverbial expressions. Okay, so before we go any further, let's just have a quick look at discourse markers. So we are going to have a look specifically at discourse markers 2. Right, so that's what we're going to be looking at tonight. We're going to be looking at discourse markers 2. So this is the second discourse marker that we've got. Adverbs and adverbial phrases. Adverbs, adverbial expressions or phrases. All right. So before we go any further, let's find out first of all, what are discourse markers? Because these are quite important. When we're looking at it, what is it? What are discourse markers? So they are words or expressions. They are often obviously adverbs, and they help you understand three main things. First thing is that help you understand the connection between what the speaker is saying and what has already been said. All right, so the present tense and the past tense. All right, also the second thing it does is it shows the connection between what the speaker has said before and what he's about to say, what he's going to say now. And then the third one is what the speaker thinks about what he is saying. All right, so this is what we're going to be looking at. We are going to be looking here at number 3, and we're going to be looking at what the speaker thinks about what he is saying. All right, so there's a couple of phrases that we're going to have a look at. This will help you especially in your speeches. It'll help you in your writing as well. So basically speaking and writing, this will help you quite a bit. All right, so the first expression we've got there is talking of. So we use this to change the direction of a conversation. So quite simple. We use that to change it. All right. But we are still making a link to what has already been said. All right. So for example, students should attend as many lessons as possible, do homework, and study for their tests. So now what we're going to do is we're going to change the direction, but we're still going to link to what has been said. And then we say, talking of homework, how useful do you think it is? So what we're doing there is we're taking something from what was said and we're highlighting it, and we're changing the direction of the conversation. All right, so it's a really interesting tool, very nice tool to use for that. Next one is by the way or incidentally. Now, by the way, incidentally is to introduce something you have, well, basically just thought of, or you want to change the subject completely. All right. So, for example, that's what the plan for the rest of. That's what the plan for the rest of our lessons. By the way, or you can say incidentally, uh, would you change anything in the way of the grammar is taught in this course? So you kind of you introducing a new thought, you changing it. It's not the same as talking of. By the way, with this one you can actually use speaking of as well. All right, if you want to be a little bit more formal, you can go with speaking of. So it's not a problem there. By the way, incidentally, it's to change the topic. All right, it's something that you just thought about, and or you want to change the topic completely. All right, next one that we got there is actually, in fact, as a matter of fact. All right, so I think we've done this already with regards to with the linkers. So we use this when we introduce additional or unexpected information. Right. Did you study the vocabulary list the teacher gave? Actually, I hate vocabulary lists. They are stupid and useless. All right, so we're giving information, additional information, and maybe unexpected information because this person doesn't like vocabulary lists. Well, to be quite honest, neither do I. I don't really enjoy them that much. All right, so I find them a bit boring, but they are very important nonetheless. All right, so well done. Let's carry on to the next one. We're just going to go through a couple of these. Next one, in any case, or anyways, or anyway. This is when we want to introduce an idea that what you said before is less important than what you're going to say now. All right, so you're saying what's said, yeah, it's not so important, but what I'm going to say now, this is important. Also, it is used to return to the main topic after a digression. So, for example, a lot of times you might be in a conversation, we might be talking about, let's say you're talking about soccer, and the conversation goes on to sport, and it goes on to different sports that are played in Australia, and before you know it, you're actually talking about rugby or cricket. Now, you started out with soccer. So when you're using any case or any way, it takes you can use that to bring it back. All right. In any case, I still believe soccer is the most popular sport. So immediately you're bringing it back to where it was. All right. So you return to the main topic. You can use this as well when you are doing a speech or when you are doing talking at class, and you find that you've strayed a little bit from the main point that you've wanted to make, and you can use this to go back to the main point, all right, without it seeming too obvious, all right, because we don't want something to seem very, very obvious. So, yeah, you can use this quite effectively. All right, next one, at least. At least. All right, so we're going to use at least to introduce a positive point after we've given some negative information. Okay, so we don't want to just give negative information. You know, you want to kind of make a bit positive at the end. Um, Also, they say to make what you've just said less definite. So, for example, yes, I failed the test. Okay, that's negative. Okay, that's kind of, yeah, that's a terribly negative. At least I'm absolutely sure I did my best. Okay, so that's a bit positive there. All right, so you've got negative here, and we're trying to move it into a positive. Education consists mainly of what we have unlearned, or at least that's what Mark Twain used to say. So you kind of trying to put a positive spin on negative information. Okay, that's when we use at least. All right, next one you can use is as I was saying. All right, also a very good one. Now, again, it is very, very similar to in any case or anyway, very similar to that. As I was saying, it's used to return to the previous subject. All right, often after you've been interrupted. So maybe you're doing a talk at school, and what you found is somebody asked you a question, the teacher might have asked you a question, and now you've got to go back to your talk, and you don't want it to sound as if you're reading things from a cue card. You can do this a lovely introduction. As I was saying, if we don't have a whiteboard to use, we'll have to do with a projector. So return to the previous subject, especially if we were interrupted by for some odd reason. Okay. Next one we've got there, on the whole. On the whole, I kind of like this one. All right, now we use that to generalize. So when we are doing an opinion, it's really, really difficult sometimes. We don't want to step on people's toes. All right. So we want to generalize our opinions because that way we're not going to be too specific. So, for example, some people will never learn anything for this reason because they understand everything too soon. All right. So That's actually quite true. However, people might take offense to that. And you can now generalize it by saying, well, on the whole, what Alexander Pope was trying to say is that, and then you can explain it in your own words. All right. So on the whole, so we saying generally speaking, this is what it means. Um, because a lot of time people might not understand a quote, or they might not understand uh, what you're trying to say. So generalize it. It might make it a little bit more accessible to everybody. Now, right, we are halfway there. All in all, we use to say that you are talking, or that you're taking everything into consideration. All right. Um, all right. So, for example, if you are brainstorming a particular idea, and you've got all these different ideas coming in, and you need to make a decision, then you can say, all in all, I think we should do this. So in other words, we're saying that we are taking everything that was said into consideration. So this is a nice conclusion as well, when you're doing when you may be talking about um, especially if you're talking about opinions, or you're talking about a specific matter, and you're saying both positive and negative parts of this topic, and you can say, all in all, I think this. Um, so basically, we're saying all things considered, that we've taken everything into consideration. Okay, so it's a nice conclusion that you can use there. After all right. After all, now after all is to introduce a strong argument that the other person might not have taken into consideration. Okay. We should try and study. That's the example, by the way. We should try and study. After all, now we want to say a strong argument. We want to give a strong argument that the other person hasn't considered. After all, the worst thing that can happen is that we fail the test. Okay. So, introducing a strong argument, um, we can use after all. Please remember that this is very useful in your writing as well as your talking, to make your speeches or your presentations a lot more interesting. Okay. But besides, all right, besides, so again, this is to add additional information or arguments, all right. Um, and how is education supposed to make me feel smarter? Besides, every time I learn something new, it pushes some old stuff out of my brain. Um, so quite an interesting way of looking at it. All right, so we're adding additional information to an already to the statement that we've already made. Basically, again, basically would be a great way to explain what we said. All right, so this is to introduce the most important or fundamental point of your argument. Um, we we can go with, basically, this is what it boils down to. All right, so we are summarizing it. For example, Quentin Tarantino said, I've always thought my soundtracks do pretty good because they're basically professional equivalents of a mixtape I'd make for you at home. Okay, so we're going down to the fundamental point. Next one, obviously. Oh my gosh, I can just see a teenage girl going obviously and rolling the eyes. But obviously is there to introduce a fact that was very clear to see or understand. Okay, so this is especially with arguments, when we're arguing a point, like for example, debating a point. Um, you can use obviously. A government can't get everything 100% right or wrong. Life's not black or white. So what we're doing there is quite simply is we introducing a fact that is very clear. Everybody should have seen it. Everybody should understand it. But sometimes don't. And this is where obviously come in. All right. Right, let's go to the next one. I mean, this one's actually obvious. All right, to make things clearer or give more details. All right, so um, you might make a statement when you're writing or when you are talking, and you want to give more information. You want to make it a bit clearer so people, so there are no um, ambiguity, there's no misunderstanding there. All right, we can use I mean. For example, he is a good student. I mean, he goes to the lessons and does his homework even though he's a very busy person. All right, so we want to kind of explain why we say he's a good student. All right, so what makes us say he's a good student? All right, so we want to clear up that thing because people might think that he's helping other students with their homework. All right. But we want to say he goes to lessons and does his homework. So we want to kind of clarify the point that we want to make. All right. Next one. In other words. All right. Again, I think this one is really, really self-explanatory. This is to say something again, but in another way. And that's important. All right, that's important in another way. So sometimes what we do is we make a statement or we explain a point, and people might not always understand what we are talking about. All right. So, for example, Fly Me to the Moon by Frank Sinatra. So I think this would have been way, 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 way before your time. Actually, it was before my time as well. But I love his music nonetheless. Okay, so fill my heart with song and let me sing forevermore. You're all I long for, all I worship and adore. All right, so he's saying a lot of things there, but it's not really coming across very clearly. In other words, please be true. Or in other words, I love you. All right, so you basically saying the same thing, but you are just saying it in another way. Okay, that's the main thing behind there. All right, so stay with me. We are almost done here. Next one we've got there is otherwise. Otherwise, that's to say what the result would be if something didn't happen or if the situation were different. Okay. So if you basically, for example, we can talk about um, saving the environment. We can talk about, recycling and reducing pollution, etc., etc. And then we can say otherwise. So now what we're going to do is we're going to say a result that if we did not look after the planet, this is what's going to happen. Otherwise, that's going to happen. So we're saying that something, what would happen if the first statement didn't happen or if the situation were different. Julia Roberts said, if you love someone, you say it right then out loud. So what is the consequences if the situation's changed or if that did not happen? Otherwise, the moment just passes you by. So if we don't do that, then this is what's going to happen. So otherwise, again, really cool to use for arguments. All right, next one. As far as um, something is concerned, as regards or regarding. All right. Now, again, we use this when we want to introduce a new topic, or we're going to announce a change of topic. So when you give a talk in class or at school or you're writing, we don't want it to sound like a robot. point 1, point 2, point 3, point 4, point 5. We don't want it to sound that. All right, so if you've made your first argument, you've made your your four arguments. Now you want to make a negative argument. You can use and regarding this, or as regards to that, so you can actually change it around a little bit. All right, so for example, the lack of objectivity as far as foreign nations are concerned, all right, is notorious. Okay, so we are basically now going to be talking about foreign nations. From one day to another, another nation is made out to be utterly depraved and fiendish, while one's own nation stands for everything that is good and noble. So, either to introduce a topic or to change a particular subject. Okay. So, we've got two more left. That is to say, all right, this one I think I've used quite a bit. So this is when we're going to have an explanation or a clarification of a point you've just made. All right. So Donald Rumsfeld, I don't actually know him, American politician, said there are known knowns. These are things we know that we know. There are known unknowns. So now that is quite confusing. All right, I don't know about you, but it's really confusing. Now he says that is to say. So now he's going to explain it. There are things that we know, we don't know, but there are also unknowns. There are things we don't know, we don't know. All right. I don't know whether his explanation helps at all, but it doesn't make it a bit confusing. A little bit more clarity. There's a bit more clarity there. So that is to say, is when we're going to clarify something, we explain it, and it just gives an introduction for it. Right, then, last one. On the one hand and on the other hand. This one I think you should know. It's quite a popular one. That we use. So this is when we do an explanation or clarification, again, of a point we just made. So basically it's quite literally on the one hand and on the other hand. All right, so we're kind of explaining what we want to say. So the aim of science is, on the one hand, as a comprehension as possible of the connection between perceptible experiences in their totality, and on the other hand, the achievement of this aim by employing a minimum of primary concept and relations. So we are explaining what science is. Please note that we can't use this if you're only going to bring up 1 point. Okay, and if you're going to bring up 3 points, we can't use this one because you only got 2 hands. Okay, so be careful about that one. You've only got 2 hands, so make sure you keep them on 2 hands. All right, on the other hand. So what I'm going to send through to you on the email is basically the discourse markers for adverbs and adverbial expressions. Everything that we've gone through now, just in a bit of more condensed form. I'm also going to be sending through to you an overview of these different sayings that we've got here, these expressions. So that should help you quite a bit with regards to the discourse markers number 2. All right. So Alvaro, that's it for tonight. I hope you have a fantastic day. I hope you have a great week and enjoy your time. And I will see you next time. Have a great time. Bye.